This is my story of how I have found my identity in the hope of Jesus Christ and how I have decided to spend the rest of my life learning how to be content by following God's will. My parents gave my siblings and I a happy childhood, but we moved houses constantly and changed schools several times, which challenged our stability as we lacked a strong foundation. When my parents divorced and remarried, my siblings and I continued to move in between two very differently run homes weekly. The new environments challenged my sense of safety and security and made me feel alienated around new friends in school who had all seemed to know each other forever. In efforts to figure out who I was and where I fit in, I quickly came to learn that gaining the acceptance and validation from popular kids in school was how I was going to find comfort. This resulted in futile attempts at trying to look and act a certain way, sexual experimentation, social rejection, and hanging around the wrong crowds of older kids at a very young age. I turned to angry rock music, the occult and witchcraft, and just about anything else that gave me a sense of identity. By age 13, I was breaking rules, defiant, smoking, getting drunk and high, and sexually promiscuous. I never felt as though I was enough if a boy chose another girl over me, which wrecked me every time. This might have hurt my siblings and my parents so deeply, but I never once considered anything about how they were feeling. I was so sick of the loss of control that by high school I became manipulative and a sexual predator. I covered up any guilt that I had with chemical and relational distractions, never owning up to my actions. I recall saying random prayers during hard times to a God I had hoped was truly there and hearing my cries for help, begging for the truth to be revealed if he really existed and had a plan for my life. By college, I continued these behaviors, 8 hours away from home, lonely, anxious, depressed, and just lost. Having never read this scripture before, I imagined this scenario in which a shepherd lost his sheep among many, but went to great lengths to rescue the one, and that I wished I was the one that he would come and rescue. I got saved at 19 years old after a conversation I had with a Christian boy I liked, when I challenged him asking, why can't I just take from the Bible what I like and ignore what I don't agree with? He replied, has that ever worked for you? You have no idea how many people you could help if you only realized God's plan for your life. I couldn't believe it later when I discovered the parable of the lost sheep, because it meant that God had been present in my soul long before I even knew he was there. Now I believed I was forgiven, handed my life over to God, and began the journey to uncover my real purpose for my life. But my emotional wounds from the past 20 years cast a shadow over the following 20 years. I joined the U.S. Air Force and served overseas for the majority of my 8 years of active duty, including Europe and Afghanistan. I experienced confusing social culture, leadership gaslighting, a near-death car accident, fallen comrades while at war, even sexual assault, all of which brought PTSD into my world. I wanted to live out my Christian faith, but the rewards often didn't work fast enough for me. And I rerouted all my focus the same way I had before, through gaining acceptance by any means. I ended up marrying an Army soldier who was a binge-drinking alcoholic with PTSD, and I tried to have a life with him around the world as we took turns deploying. But in response to his infidelity, I was also unable to be faithful, and the cycles of sin continued. Despite our best efforts at playing house, we were both very emotionally unwell, and he ended up leaving me for an affair with a woman he got pregnant while we were still together. Instead of surrendering to God my pain during the lowest point of my life, I held on to my own will and pushed even harder to take control back in crafting the perfect life. I switched jobs, moved homes, and cultivated a few of the sickest, most codependent, and most shameful romantic relationships I have ever had in my life, all the while using scripture to justify my choices. I thought if my heart felt it, God must have put it there. And I was convinced he gave me the go-ahead to wreck my entire life over and over in order to fix what could not be repaired by anyone but him. Paul says in Romans 7:15, I do not understand my own actions. I do not practice what I want to do, but I am doing the very thing I hate. The hardest part was that all the while I pressed on with my own will in trying to create my identity, but I knew all along what I was doing was not why God created me. I just couldn't stop myself. I didn't walk into my first Celebrate Recovery meeting until December 2014. It was through this program I saw real faith being lived out by imperfect people who were acknowledging their problems and actually doing something about them that was working. It was there I accepted the first principle of Celebrate Recovery, which states, realize I'm not God. Admit that I am powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong thing and that my life is unmanageable. After 10 years of recovery, mentorship, mental health services, and better lifestyle choices, I have finally learned to surrender not just my life, but my will over to the care of God. I have been blessed to serve God's purposes in ministry, found meaningful work as a licensed counselor, helping others find their purpose, and have grown healthy new roots as God has orchestrated for me a new family, but one that extends even beyond that of my household, but to the brothers and sisters of Christ who are willing to walk with me through any darkness and navigate me back to the light. My life verse and personal promise from God is from Joel 2. I will restore the years the locusts have eaten. You will have plenty to eat until you are full, and you will praise the name of the Lord your God who has worked wonders for you, and never again will my people be put to shame. I am a daughter, a sister, a veteran, a survivor, a counselor, a grateful and devoted wife, and now a mother. But the only person I have ever been content with being throughout it all has been a child of God. I no longer seek for water in empty wells. I am trying to live a lifestyle of eternal gratitude with the belief that I am enough as I am. The feeling of contentment as things are, not as I would have them, is growing within me. My insight into my daily purpose, even more so than my life's purpose, is slowly taking center stage. I've finally gotten to where I can say, if you don't like me, that's cool, because I do. And no matter how bad I mess up, which is a lot, God accepts my surrendered heart and gives me grace to turn around. I am here to tell you today that he will do the same for you, because everything else may change, but he never will. Thank you for letting me share.